Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Just Another Autism Podcast. I'm Eileen Lamb, and today we are going to be talking about the importance of early diagnosis for children on the autism spectrum. Manish Arora is the co-founder of LinusBio, the company behind ClearStrand-ASD, a new test that uses hair samples to help detect autism risk earlier in life. Welcome, Manish. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be on your show.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living and why you're here today?
Yeah, of course. I'm a scientist. I'm a lifelong scientist and learner. I wear two formal hats. I'm founder and CEO of Linus Biotechnology, a company that develops technologies to help families and children who are neurodiverse. I'm also professor and vice chairman of environmental medicine at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine.
Wow, quite the resume.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm a lifelong learner, and I've spent a lot of time just being a nerd and enjoying science. So this is about par for the course.
Do you want to tell us a little bit why early diagnosis is so important for families and children on the autism spectrum?
Absolutely, and that's a great place to start this conversation. For me, it's both a scientifically important question, but also my journey as a father. I'll start off with the science. The human brain really is developing so rapidly in the first couple of years of life. And we pick up so many skills like the way we socialize, the way we make eye contact, the way we understand our world, even before actual language sets in. So that's a crucial period, both from a point of view of when things are not going well, we can actually fix them. We call it a critical window of opportunity. So everybody understands, no mother or father would say, oh, well, the first 2 years were important. Instinctually, we all understand that. But when do we diagnose autism in the US? That age has been stubbornly stuck between 4 and 5 years for the past decade. So we are missing that critical window of opportunity when an early diagnosis would allow us to deliver early intervention. And many studies have shown we deliver intervention early on, the children do much better, sometimes substantially better. That's my scientific view. As a parent of a neurodiverse child, it took me a long time from the time we first noticed, hey, this is a bit different to what we experienced with her sisters. It was after the age of 2.5 then we realized, oh, this is what's going on. And that journey is brutal, and in my opinion, unnecessary. So part of my mission is to just say, well, no one else should experience what I did as a father. One of the reasons to have this objective biochemical tool is that often the symptoms of autism can be confused or are similar to symptoms of other conditions. So by knowing whether it is specifically autism or not, it can be very useful in charting out the child's therapy. When considering whether families could benefit from early detection technologies like ClearStrand-ASD, uh, it can be very useful when there are known risk factors. For example, if there is a sibling or a relative with autism in the family, then the risk of the child having autism rises. Other factors can contribute, such as being born very premature or having a father older than the 40s at conception. Also, as I mentioned before, often parents see early signs, and that itself can be a trigger that families can consider using a technology like ClearStrand-ASD.
I feel very similar to you. I'm also a mother of two children on the spectrum, and you know,
Right.
I was lucky that my oldest son was diagnosed before he was even two, but I also know that's not the experience most parents have. Um, can you tell our listeners about signs of autism in children, maybe under 3? Like, what can parents be on the lookout for?
So absolutely, and I want to predicate that for your listeners that I'm not an autism clinician, I'm an autism scientist. So what I'm sharing here is, what my clinical colleagues have told me, but of course, for very precise information, they should go to their clinician. We know autism is characterized by difficulties in social interaction. Uh, we know children will have trouble just making eye contact, like many other children do when they are playing. They will also exhibit repetitive behaviors. Instead of playing with toys, they're often organizing toys in a specific pattern. That is one story I keep hearing. But often we forget that these symptoms appear clinically and more obviously after the age of 3, as you mentioned. However, parents have the ability to know that, well, something is looking different here from a much earlier age. And I go back to my first point that we shouldn't wait for symptoms to arise. Why not have a test that can be delivered very early before symptoms arise? And when we have the best opportunity to offer therapy and really help children at a time when it can have the biggest impact on their lives.
What type of test would that be?
So I'm working on one technology, but to be fair, there are many technologies out there. There are neuroimaging methods, there are AI and machine learning tools, video analysis tools, eye tracking tools. The technology that I have developed and my team has developed takes just a single strand of scalp hair, and based on that analysis, we have developed a biochemical marker, a biochemical panel that rules out autism, and it can do so as early as 1 month of age. So this technology now offers the opportunity for parents, even at a very early stage, to say, well, is my child on that journey of in future getting an autism diagnosis, or can that be ruled out?
Wow. And so there are, like you said, many technology that are emerging for
Yes.
earlier autism detection, because that's very important. So what inspired the development of ClearStrand-ASD for autism spectrum disorder?
Now, what led to this and how the science works, I'll try to keep it brief, but remember, I'm a professor, so this if it starts sounding like a lecture, you have to promise to interrupt me. But um, we take a single strand of hair and we open it up like a book lengthwise. And hair have this amazing property, and it's a property everybody would have seen. If you've ever seen a tree that has been cut down, and have seen growth rings in that, hair have growth rings just like a tree. And when you look at a tree and you look at those growth rings, you say, well, year 1, year 2, year 3, you can start counting back in time. With hair, we do the same thing with lasers and very sensitive spectrometers and detectors. We are able to measure thousands of molecules at about an hourly resolution. So for the first time ever, I can get you the same information completely non-invasively from the comfort of your home by just clipping one strand of hair, as much information as it would take 1,000 blood tests. And we did multinational studies. We've studied twins in Sweden. We've studied Japanese babies, children in New York and California and Mexico City. And we find this consistent pattern that allows us to identify those children who are, at risk of autism and not at risk. However, our algorithm is really defined to strengthen the relationship. Our tool is there to assist the clinician and the family. So we are not here to deliver the final diagnosis. A clinician should do that. But we have developed this tool after listening to many families that what they're looking for is something that can rule out autism. And like I said before, we can do it as early as 1 month of age.
That's incredible. There are many parents who actually worry about the label, like labeling their child like early on. So like how do you balance the benefits of an early diagnosis? Again, we understand like this is not a diagnosis test, it's just to rule it
Yes,
out. But
yes.
how do you balance it against those concerns?
Again, I'll answer this both as a scientist and as a parent. The science says if we if we detect the risk early and start delivering intervention early, it has a beneficial impact, sometimes a substantial impact in improving the child's long-term outcomes. The other thing we must remember is that early intervention for autism takes the form of therapy. And this has very few downsides. This is not a pharmaceutical intervention. This is not a surgical intervention. So the risk-benefit ratio is that, well, there's a lot to gain and there is a limited amount of risk for the family. I'm not going to ignore the fact that there might be some financial implication if you've given therapy early when it was maybe not needed, but beyond that, really early intervention can have such a great impact. The second thing I'll say is our accuracy in ruling out autism is very high. So we are not just delivering something without being very certain. The technical term, negative predictive value, or how accurate are we when we rule autism out, is 95% on average, sometimes even higher. So this is a very accurate rule out test. And so those two factors combined make it very useful. Now I'll answer this question as a parent. In my own journey, I wish I had known sooner, because once you know sooner, you can do something about it. And every day that I see my child improving is this sense of joy and achievement that, and also a sense of hope. And we shouldn't lose any time in doing that. And I think your experience, as you mentioned at the beginning of this, that your eldest child got diagnosed under the age of 2, you were fortunate, but also I'm certain it has had a positive impact on your child's life.
Very much agreed. So thankful that we're able to receive early, interventions for my son. I mean, it's made a big difference in his life. But what role do you think rigorous science play in making sure that those technologies are not only like innovative, because that's great, but
Yes.
also, trustworthy and truly useful for families, because there's so much out there and it's difficult sometimes for parents to know what to trust.
Exactly. And I'm sometimes shocked when we go on the internet, the kind of things we find that are completely unsubstantiated. I can share how we developed ClearStrand-ASD. We did studies on twins in Sweden, for example, in collaboration with the Karolinska Institute. We did national study in Japan, and then we again repeated this in a study in New York and a statewide study of almost 1,000 families in California. And we also went to a very poor community in Mexico. So this has taken us, a better part of 10 years to gather all this science. And the core technology behind it, I have been developing for close to 20 years. But that is the effort. The other part of trusting science is the diligence, having independent scientists and experts review this. So all our studies are in peer-reviewed journals. In fact, we insist on publishing open access. So anybody out there, as long as they have an internet connection, can view our papers without having to pay a fee or to download an article. So, people can read this themselves. This technology grew out of an NIH center at a very good medical school, the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, as I mentioned. So we've undergone peer review with the NIH. And in fact, the core platform, which is known as Strand DX, upon which this new technology, the ClearStrand-ASD, the core platform, was even submitted to the FDA, and it got FDA breakthrough designation. So you even talk to the FDA. Of course, testing in the US comes under the mandate of CLIA, and we have CLIA certification. That's another process of diligence. So we've undergone a lot of diligence. And of course, we'll continue to do more science. We're just about to publish another large paper on about 1,500 families. And that again allows us to share with the scientific community, share with the families, and get their feedback on what is the next iteration of this technology.
And I also wanted to mention for our listeners that, if you're worried about your child's development, you can take the MChat on the Autism Speaks website. That's personally how I knew with my son that, I needed to make an appointment with this pediatrician, because so the MChat is 20 questions. It will ask you about your child's development, like does your child point to an airplane in the sky? Very basic skills for children up to, I want to say, 3 years old. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so my son scored 18 out of 20. And anything above 3 is considered a risk for autism and something to investigate. So definitely worth checking that out on the Autism Speaks website. Again, it's called the DM chat. And I wanted to ask you, Manish, thank you so much, first of all, for sharing so openly. I appreciate your honesty. What would you want families listening to this podcast to take away about the future of autism detection?
Look, of course, and this is both my responsibility as a scientist, and but also as a parent. It's important to know that, if we detect the risk early and start therapy early, it has a beneficial impact in many cases. I would go as far as saying in most cases. So do not lose hope. Finding early is actually in a way better than finding later. So I'm hesitant to say it like this, but for me at least it was good news because I knew something was going on. I couldn't put my finger on it, and because I couldn't identify, couldn't give it that diagnostic label, we didn't know what to do. As soon as you find out, we know what to do. We found good clinicians with whom now, my child has been for over 9 years, and she's doing really well. So draw hope from my own experience. It's never easy to get a diagnosis for your child. Of course, as parents, we want no diagnosis for our child. We just want good things. But this is the reality of life. The other thing I want parents to know is that as these new technologies are being developed, parents must leverage them along with their clinicians. The reason we designed ClearStrand-ASD as a rule-out test is because we did not want to start displacing the clinician. In fact, what we want to do is strengthen the relationship between the family and clinicians. We want to empower the clinicians and the families to help the child when it has the biggest impact. So now you have these opportunities to leverage both the innovations on the therapy side, but also on the early detection side. So let's take advantage of that.
And if we look 5 years down the road, how do you envision autism diagnosis and intervention evolving with tools like ClearStrand, Early Tech, and all of the other ones out there?
Absolutely. So science is moving rapidly. One thing that really encourages me about the autism field is now that even in the last 5 years, we've had such a rapid development in science. For example, the tools you mentioned. So over the next 5 years, my hope is that early detection will be routine. Like in our case, ClearStrand just requires you to send a strand of hair from home. You don't even have to go to a clinician, and then you can leverage this ever-improving field of telehealth. So it makes everything that much more efficient. Also, we are having major advances on the therapy side. As we detect autism early, our clinical colleagues, our therapist colleagues are developing methods to help children at a younger and younger age. So I expect to see an even more rapid development. Also, let's be aware of the fact that autism always, many times, comes with comorbidities. In my family, we've experienced things like anxiety with my child, but now there are medical or pharmaceutical approaches to help there, and it has such a huge impact for my own family. So I also feel that in the next 5 years, there will be improvements on the medication side. And now that we have a biochemical tool, because to do clinical trials, you need a biochemical endpoint, something that can study the pathways, I'm hoping that I can play a role there as well. Like I said, for me as a parent, I see the benefits of certain medications for my child. I want to help develop the next generation of medications as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Manish. To our listeners, if you have any questions, please email us or comment on this video, and I'm sure the team at ClearStrand will be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Manish.
Thank you, Eileen. It was a pleasure.